shobhate jnanamalam niranjanam kutapuna shaswara badram ishvare nacharpitam karma yarapyukaranam naiskamyamapchuta bhava varjidham nashobhate jnanamalam niranjanam kutapuna shaswara badram ishvare nacharpitam karma yarapyukaranam. Someone else can try?
Sure. Hare Krishna.
Hare Bol.
Naishkarmyam api achyuta bhava varjitam na shobhate jnanamalam niranjanam kutah punah shashwata abhadrashvare na charpitam karma yadapi akaranam.
Naiskarmyam apyachyuta bhava varjitam na shobhate jnanamalam niranjanam kutapuna shasvara bhadramishvare na charpitam karma yad apyakaranam.
Naiskaryamapyachuta bhava varjitam shobhate jnanam malam niranjanam kuta punashashvat abhadaram ishvare charpitam karma yad apyakarmanam.
Mataji? Oh, go ahead, Prabhu. Please go ahead.
Hare Krishna.
Jai.
Naiskarmayam api achyuta bhava varjitam nasobhate jnanam malam niranjanam uta puna sasvada abhadramisvara nacharpitam karma yad apya akaranam. Hare Krishna.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Go ahead. Hari Bol, Bhakti Bab.
Hare Bol.
Hari Bol, Bhakti Babji. Hari Bol.
Nashkarmyam api achyuta bhava varjitam na shobhati ganam alam noram janam kuta puna shashvad abhadram ishvari na charpitam karma yad api akaranam. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Very nice. Ladies?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Naiskarmyamapi achyuta bhava varjitam na shobhate jnanamalam niranjanam kutapuna sashvat abhadramashvare na charpitam karma yadapyakaranam. Hare Krishna.
Hari Bol. Anyone else?
Yes. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Dandavat pranam. Naishkarmyam api achyute bhava varjitam dashobhate jnanam alam niranjanam kutaha punaha shashat abhadramishvare nacharpitam karma yadapi akaranam. Hare Krishna.
Hari Bol.
Naishkarmyam api achyuta bhava varjitam na shobhate jnanam alam niranjanam kuta punah shashvat abhadram ishvare na cha arpitam karma yad api akaranam.
Anyone else?
Hare Krishna.
Hari Bol.
Naishkarmayam apya achyut bhava varjitam na shobhate jnanam alam niranjanam kutaha punah shashvata apatram ishvare na charpitam karma yad apya akaranam. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Anyone else? So word for word, nice karamyam, self-realization, being freed from the reactions of fruitive work. Api, in spite of. Achyuta, the infallible Lord. Bhava, conception. Varjitam, devoid of. Na, does not. Sob, shobhate, look well. Jnanam, transcendental knowledge. Alam, by and by. Niranjanam, free from designations. Kutaha, where is. Puna, again. Shasvat, always. Abhadram, uncongenial. Isware unto the Lord. Na, not. Cha, and. Arpitam, offered. Karma, fruitive work. Yadapi, what is. Akaranam, not fruitive. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Knowledge of self-realization, even though free from all material affinity, does not look well if devoid of a conception of the infallible God. What then is the use of fruitive activities, which are naturally painful from the very beginning and transient by nature, if they are not utilized for the devotional service of the Lord? Purport. As referred to above, not only ordinary literatures devoid of the transcendental glorification of the Lord are condemned, but also Vedic literatures and speculation on the subject of impersonal Brahman when they are devoid of devotional service. When speculation on the impersonal Brahman is condemned on the above ground, then what to speak of ordinary fruitive work, which is not meant to fulfill the aim of devotional service? Such speculative knowledge and fruitive work cannot lead one to the goal of perfection. Fruitive work, in which almost all people in general are engaged, is always painful either in the beginning or at the end. It can be fruitful only when made subservient to the devotional service of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita also it is confirmed that the result of such fruitive work may be offered for the service of the Lord. Otherwise, it leads to material bondage. The bona fide enjoyer of the fruitive work is the personality of Godhead, and thus when it is engaged for the sense gratification of the living beings, it becomes an acute source of trouble. Om Agyanati Miranda Sajjananjanan Salakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swami Rupakarab Mayam Dadate Swapadantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shivasati Go Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So very poignant verse and purport. And the first line, I find it very interesting. Naiskarmyam apchuta bhava varjitam. And in the word for word, naiskarmyam, self-realization, being freed from the reactions of fruitive work. So that first part is significant on many levels, but let's try and look at it. Self-realization. So we're talking about self-realization, and just like we have our book, Science of Self-Realization. So there's a great science of self-realization. And what is the self? Which is the point that Srila Prabhupada always speaks about. If it's possible, can you take down the verse so I can see the devotees? Otherwise, if the verse stays up, I can't see who's on the call, whoever's managing the call. If you could just take the verse down, then I can have access to my portrait thing here, gallery thing. Is that possible? If not, we'll go ahead. So this self-realization, meaning understanding the self, who we are eternally, not this temporary material body, but eternal spirit soul. And it's explained in the Bhagavad Gita. The first lesson of Bhagavad Gita is actually, we're not these bodies. I posed that to some devotees once in a study group, and one lady argued, said that, oh, that's not the first lesson of Bhagavad Gita. The first lesson of Bhagavad Gita is, do your dharma, do your duty. So I said, no, Prabhupada explains. But of course, she was not at the platform of truly accepting Srila Prabhupada, so it was difficult for her to comprehend. But the fact is, the first lesson of Bhagavad Gita, Dehi nos pinyata dehe kalmaram yovanam jarat adihantara praptir dhirastatanamuyate. So the soul is passing through this body, boyhood, youth to old age. And at the time of death, it passes on. That's the first lesson. It's the foundation. So without that foundational lesson, it's difficult to move forward. Now, that's just the beginning. That's not the end. That's the beginning. So you need that in order to make progress. You need that foundation. It's like if you say 1 + 1 = 4, or or 1 + 1 = 3, and then you continue to calculate after that. Everything after that will be wrong because the foundation, the beginning was not right. So human society, as Srila Prabhupada explains in so many ways, it is off track because it's beginning from the wrong calculation. The beginning with the idea that we're this body, society is built on that calculation. Everything about this society, and that's explained here in the verse as well, meaning the purport in Srila Prabhupada's discussion, that this trying to enjoy this world on any level, it's suffering in the beginning, it's suffering at the end, it continues, it's painful. Thank you, appreciate that. See all the lovely pictures and Dr. Bob's smiling face is so nice. So it's painful, we know that. Most people don't really enjoy their work. That's not to say that no one enjoys their work. But as Srila Prabhupada pointed out, that if you're not going to get paid, how much would you enjoy your work? You find people who volunteer. There's a lot of volunteers. Some of them are just really outstanding people. They do so much for others and even not thinking about themselves. And that's a good thing. But generally speaking, people don't like work. It's difficult. Most activities are not that pleasurable. So that work, when not done for Krishna, is even more painful because there's no end game. It's just this cycle. Go to work, make money, pay your bills, enjoy life, because that's the calculation that we've made or has been made for us. Let's say we came into this world as little children without any knowledge, and then we were educated about how to enjoy the world. Everything about our education is leading up to how we can be secure to enjoy this world. But the reality is that Dukkhalayam Shasvatam, this world is set up in such a way that enjoyment is not really possible in a consistent, ongoing fashion. There is some, idea of enjoyment to some degree, but then there's so much suffering. Why? It's just like the example of the jailhouse, which I love. That's one of my favorite examples. And Srila Prabhupada says, an analogy is good if it has many points of similarity. And I find that the jailhouse example has so many points of similarity. This one point I want to make specifically, in the jailhouse, it is made of the same materials that your house is made of, in most cases. There's wood, there's stone, there's paint, there's bars. People have bars on their doors, so bars, whatever. But the difference is your home, theoretically, is your palace. It's for your freedom to enjoy your life, to fill it up with all kinds of things that can facilitate the enjoyment of life. The jailhouse, on the other hand, is a house. That's why they call it jailhouse. It is a house. And it's a very well-constructed house. In fact, it's probably more well-constructed or better constructed than your own house, because it's meant for a very heavy purpose. And what is that purpose? To constrain, to confine, to limit, to inflict a certain amount of discomfort. So why? So you won't want to come back there. Same thing about this material world. If it were just perfect, no problems at all, then we might become comfortable and think that we can stay here, even up to the point of the demigods who have that level of comfort, very high level of comfort. And also the subterranean heavenly planets have a very high standard of material enjoyment. But for the soul, as I'm saying, the calculation is wrong. You're trying to satisfy the body, but the soul is not being satisfied, because the soul can't be satisfied by arranging material things in any fashion you want, whether you're in the jailhouse or in your house. You will not find happiness, continual happiness. You'll find the euphoria of some nice thing that you have, or some nice place that you go to, or some nice thing that you eat, but it's not lasting. We all know that. That's why we have to keep filling up our refrigerators with all kinds of things, and keep buying new cars and buying new clothes, and even buying new houses when they start to run down, or at least repairing them, because that's the nature of the material world. It's temporary, full of misery. The misery comes really because of the temporal nature of the material world. We're trying to enjoy something. We're trying to hang on to it, and it's disappearing. Even our own bodies. We all know that. We're trying to hang on to these bodies and hopefully enjoy them some more years. And people are using Botox and this and that and facelifts and so many things to try to hold on to it. Because this is our chaitra, this is our field of enjoyment. And this is all we know. I mean, I know my body, I don't know yours. So I'm trying to arrange my body in such a way that I can continually enjoy it, but do Kali Shastata. And Srila Prabhupada, I'm trying to remember the exact purport, I can't remember right now. And he says that the material world is perfectly set up to frustrate the living being, something like to that effect. It's arranged in such a way to frustrate us. We start contemplating the objects of the senses, we develop attachment, we get lust, and then actually we get frustrated. From lust, anger, because the happiness is not there, and we get frustrated, we become angry. People are very angry nowadays because they're not feeling the happiness that they're striving for. And they work hard. People work very hard to maintain their families, to maintain the city, the country. There's so many levels of bureaucracy to make sure everything goes well, and still people are frustrated. It's unbelievable, but it is understandable because Dukkha Shastvatam. This is a jailhouse. It's not meant to be a place to enjoy. But how can we justify the sacrifices, we meaning devotees, that we're making if the world is meant to suffer? Who wants to suffer? Because we have the option. By engaging in devotional service, we become happy. Just like this weekend. I guarantee devotees are all going to be smiling. The work week is over. You're going to be you better dance in the kirtan. Otherwise, Vishnu and myself will find you and make you dance. So, because if you don't dance for Lord Jagannath, how are you going to be happy? Don't just walk along the side and just kind of aimlessly looking around. Touch the ropes, throw your hands up in front of Jagannath, and make sure you look at Lord Jagannath and Lord Balaram and Lady Subhadra and Srila Prabhupada. Make sure you turn around and look at them. They're coming out to give us this opportunity. Don't just turn your back on them. Make sure you turn around and look at them. I remember when I went to the New York Rath Yatra and Javataka Maharaj was there, and he was in his wheelchair. And he was just fighting to get to the rope, to touch the rope, and then to look up at the deity. It was beautiful to watch. So that is how we get our happiness. That is our happiness. Just seeing the Lord on his chariot, not seeing us in our cars. We all have our different cars and they may be nice or not so nice. Prabhupada said, nice car, like a Rolls Royce. He called it a nice car. So we drive in our cars and whatever, but this is Lord Jagannath's cart. Ratha, his festival. It's amazing. The Lord has a car. And his car is going to be more beautiful than any car on that road that we travel on. Seriously, more love has gone into building that cart than any car on the road. Most of the cars are just, machine, whatever they do, conveyor belt or robotic or whatever. This is made by the hands of the devotees. Bhajitam priti purvakam. That cart is just moving. It's like love in motion. And the Lord is happily sitting there and relishing the loving faces of the devotees. I remember the Philadelphia Rath Yatra in 1975. One reason Srila Prabhupada was sitting on that cart, and if you look at that movie, which I'm sure most of you have seen, most of the devotees are looking at Prabhupada. And the kirtan is facing Prabhupada. And it says devotees are jumping and dancing, and Prabhupada is looking back at the devotees. And Lord Jagannath looked back at the devotees. And there's a reciprocation of love. That's where the happiness is. It's not in accumulating a lot of material things. Not that we shouldn't have material things. Devotees should not, be without the necessities of life. But those necessities of life are not going to give us real happiness. So one of the verses, I'm going to come back to this translation again, but one of the verses that Prabhupada referred to, Srila Prabhupada referred to, it's in Bhagavad Gita chapter 3, text 9. Yagartat kamano yatra loko yam karma bandhanaha tat artam karma konteya mukta sangha. Oh, we have a devotee in Philly, Mukta Sangha, right? Mukta Sangha samachara. So in the purport, he says, the verse is work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Lokoyam karma bandhana. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction. His capitalized meaning Supreme Lord. Perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction. And in that way, you will always remain free from bondage. Purport. Since one has to work even for the simple maintenance of the body, the prescribed duties for a particular social position and quality are so made that purpose can be fulfilled. Jagya means Lord Vishnu, or sacrificial performances. All sacrificial performances also are meant for the satisfaction of Lord Vishnu. The Vedas enjoin Jagyo Vai Vishnu. In other words, the same purpose is served whether one performs prescribed jagyas or directly serves Lord Vishnu. In other words, everything is meant for the satisfaction of Lord Vishnu, not for our personal sense gratification. Because if we strive to enjoy on our own accord, then lokoyam karma bandhana. Karma bandhana means bondage by fruitive activities. All the fruitive activities we're performing are binding us up. It's like that little Chinese, I think they call it Chinese finger puzzle thing. You put it on the 2 points of one finger and the other finger, and you stick your finger in there, and the more you pull, the more difficult it is to get out. I don't remember how actually you get out from it, but the more you pull on it, the more you get stuck. So the more we interact with material nature for the purpose of sense gratification, it's like quicksand. The more you struggle, the more you go down. So the more we try to manipulate or control this material energy, the more frustrated we become, the more unhappy we become. And it ensures that we'll have to take another birth in the cycle of birth and death, samsara. But if we take that same energy and increase it by 10 and offer that to the Lord in his service. See, we should work harder for the Lord than we do for our own material life. How hard do you work at work? How hard does a mother work to maintain her child and to maintain the home? A lot of work involved. So we transfer that work and consciousness, because work requires consciousness. Some people aimlessly do their work, but some people actually put their heart and soul into their work in order to have a good relationship with the boss and make more money in the job. So when we're doing our work, which should be increased by a factor of 10 or even more for Krishna, we have to add a deeper element, which is bhajitam pritipurvakam, loving devotion. They call it the secret sauce. The secret sauce is bhajitam pritipurvakam, bhakti, devotion, love, added to the mix of our life. Then everything becomes nice. Just like this verse is saying, nice karma, self-realization, being freed from the reactions of fruitive work. That's a big deal. Self-realization freed from the reaction of fruitive work. That's a big deal. Api, in spite of, Achyuta, the infallible Lord, bhava conception, varjitam, devoid of. But if that nice karmyam, that self-realization, which is being freed from the reactions of fruitive work, is devoid of the conception, bhava conception. Achyuta, the infallible Lord, bhava conception, varjitam, devoid of that. It's useless. Has no real value. Even if it's the so-called Vedic literature, that's what's being brought up here. He talks about the Vedic literatures. Let's see. As referred to above, not only ordinary literatures devoid of the transcendental glorification of the Lord are condemned, but also Vedic literatures and speculation on the subject of impersonal Brahman. When they are devoid of devotional service, they're also useless. They have no value. They're condemned. It's like a prisoner is condemned to go to prison, sometimes condemned to death. That's a heavy word that Srila Prabhupada is using in reference to the Vedic literatures. I find it interesting that so many devotees, in the mood of trying to, I don't know, I don't want to get off track, but whatever the purpose is, trying to enhance their understanding of the culture, whatever, they pursue the path of trying to delve into many Vedic literatures, the majority of which do not point to the devotional service of the Lord, because that is the problem that Vyasadeva himself had, the compiler, literary incarnation of the Lord, After compiling all this incredible literature, his Guru Maharaj, Narada Muni, posed it to him. Why are you not happy, my dear Prabhu? Why are you looking so frustrated? What is it? You look what you've done. You've given all this amazing information. Look what you've accomplished. Why are you unhappy, my dear Prabhu? You fail to directly point to the devotional service of the Lord. That is the problem. Now do it. That's called Srimad Bhagavatam. It's almost like we don't need anything other than Srimad Bhagavatam. Of course, Bhagavad Gita and all the books that Srila Prabhupada has given us. Within Srila Prabhupada's books, there's a storehouse of Vedic knowledge. It's like the Goswamis. They curated all the major points of the Vedic philosophy into their writings, like Rupa Goswami and the Nectar Devotion, Nectar of Instruction, Sanatana Goswami, Jiva Goswami, Gopal Bhatta Goswami, Raghunath Bhatta, Raghunath Das. They put all the knowledge of the Vedas, they gathered it, sift through all of that and gave us the essence. Nana Shastra Vichadanaika Nipanu Sadharma Samstapaku. They painstakingly arranged this knowledge for us. So we don't have to try to duplicate that effort. Or as they say, reinvent the wheel. There's no need for devotees to reinvent the wheel and try to become quote unquote Vedic scholars and then come back with a lot of different ideas which are taken from the Vedas, which may not point directly to devotional service, which is our real business. Our family heirloom, however you say the word, is what Srila Prabhupada gave us in terms of a clear understanding of this culture and philosophy. If we're not careful, because it's a razor's edge, this process of trying to become Krishna conscious, cultivating our bhakti lata bij, the seed of devotion. As Srila Prabhupada explains, the rules and regulations of devotional service constitutes the bhakti lata bija. So we've been given that by Srila Prabhupada. We should cultivate that. Cultivating knowledge beyond what Srila Prabhupada has given us or indicated as something we should maybe look at is, in effect, somewhat dangerous for the development of our consciousness, which we're talking about here, the right consciousness. We're not trying to become scholars of the Vedic philosophy. We would like to be scholars of what Srila Prabhupada has presented. Yes, apply all your scholarly abilities to what Srila Prabhupada has presented. Similarly, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, a verse, which I can't remember right now, but it basically says, if you are accustomed to understanding things with logic and reason and argument, then apply that to the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and you will be amazed. So if you have the tendency toward logic, if you have the tendency toward deep study, apply it to the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, apply it to the life of Srila Prabhupada, you will be amazed. Apply it to the devotional service of Krishna, Krishna's Leela, pastimes, all those things. It's not that in Krishna consciousness, we can't use our intelligence. I find it interesting also, devotees feel offended if they think that someone tell them, really just learn how to accept these things that Srila Prabhupada has given us as axiomatic truth. And they think, well, I have to use my intelligence. If it's not making sense to me, I don't know if I can accept it. What was the thing we said the other day in class? It was about, not this class, but in the Bhagavad Gita class. Your jurisdiction, maybe, I know, Benjavali, you were in the class yesterday. We had the class about, not yesterday, but Tuesday, on Bhagavad Gita. And then we pointed out this phrase about your intelligence or your jurisdiction of your intelligence. In other words, it goes to a certain level and then it stops. By your intelligence, you remember that, Benjavali? By your intelligence, it goes here and it stops. Beyond that is achintya. Achintya is beyond that, inconceivable. So what are you trying to conceive? You can only conceive this much. Even Brahma says, others may say they know you, but I don't. You can only conceive this much. So instead of going through the ascending process, trying to gather information, we go the descending process. We take from Srila Prabhupada, and then we, like Sukadeva Goswami, like a parrot, we try to not necessarily make it sweeter, but we try to present it as Srila Prabhupada presented it. Even if we're given a class, this is one of my humble suggestions to those who give a class. Study how Prabhupada gave a class. Study how Srila Prabhupada gave class. The way in which he spoke, the mannerisms, the tone of his voice. Study it. And then try not to imitate, but try to emulate. Try to respectfully present, honoring Srila Prabhupada. We want to honor Srila Prabhupada just by trying to follow what he gave us. That's honoring Srila Prabhupada. We talk about keeping Srila Prabhupada in the center. That's how you do it. You reflect in your actions what you know that Srila Prabhupada wanted, how he did things. Like the Christians, they say, what would Jesus do? We should say, what would Prabhupada do in this circumstance? But you won't know what Prabhupada would do in that circumstance unless you study Srila Prabhupada. Not only just the books, but he, the person, how he applied this knowledge. Jnana Vijnana. So in that way, we will, excuse me, my voice is a little messed up here, but we will be safe. If we venture out into the vast ocean of Vedic knowledge and Vedic culture, guaranteed we're mostly going to become confused. And many devotees have become very confused. The simple life of Krishna consciousness that Srila Prabhupada has given us becomes complicated by too many influences, whether they're Vedic influences or Western influences. We need to understand this culture. The philosophy as Srila Prabhupada explained it. Bhagavad Gita as it is. Srimad Bhagavatam as it is. All the literatures as they are. So then that way we can be protected. So this idea that even the Vedic literatures devoid of devotional service are condemned. Very, very important for us to understand that. We don't criticize or minimize anyone else's endeavors in life. We don't criticize the Hindu culture, the Indian culture, but we're careful how we integrate with those cultures or interact with those cultures. We must be firm. We must be like a Majjhima Adhikari. You may not be there yet, but we have to be like that. We have to be so firmly fixed in our dedication, our commitment to Srila Prabhupada, like the Majjhima Adhikari, who cannot be shaken. You can't shake the faith of Majjhima Adhikari. Majjhima Adhikari may not be totally expert in all the shastras and be able to quote so many things, but they're absolutely convinced of this process. Absolutely convinced. So that's how we want to function. You know, sometimes they say, fake it till you make it. But that means we're not there yet, but we know what there is. Like they use this term now. There's no there, but we know where there is because we study Prabhupada's books. We study Nectar of Devotion. We know what it means to be a Majjhima Adhikari. We know what it is to be where we are mostly, which is Kanishta Adhikari. And we know what the Uttama Adhikari is. But that Majjhima Adhikari mentality, where you cannot be shaken in your faith, that is very important for us. So I want to stop there because this is a very interesting verse, and I'd like to hear some thoughts on this, some comments on it to help me understand it. So I'll turn it back over to whoever is organizing the class. Drona, are you still there? I see your name. Dronakari Prabhu?
Yes, I'm here, Prabhu.
Sorry. See if we have any questions or comments. Comments are wonderful. They don't have to be questions. They can be your realizations. I relish the realizations of devotees.
Very nice. People can just raise their hand. People have just been speaking now. They've just been going for it. If you can't talk, you can always type in the chat box. Let's do participation here.
Okay.
Ravinda Prabhu used to say, silence means everybody has understood.
Agrees. Here, I reached out to Ravinda Prabhu to come for the festival, but he's been sick lately. So everyone, please keep Ravinda Prabhu in your prayers. He's had some physical challenges. He sends his apologies for not being able to come, but he really wanted to come, but he's not feeling well. So please pray for him. Thank you.
Dr. Bob has his hand up.
Howdy, Bo,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Bob.
I'll say something. I'll break the silence. It's funny. We kept, you brought up the analogy of the prison cell and living in a prison. It's funny. I don't know how many conversations I've had this week with non-devotees where I've made the comment, like, I want out. Like, and I got to say, like, I don't mean I'm going to kill myself. I just want out of this material world. And they're just like, oh, okay. And like, they don't get it. It's so funny. I'm like, it's like we're just confined to this prison cell. Everyone's arguing with everyone. And there's just so much hatred and anger. I'm like, I want out. Whatever it takes. I don't want to come back here. So it's so funny. I feel like all throughout the week, like that theme has been coming up. And it's like, it's just so ironic that I've had this conversation with non-devotees so many times over the last week that this keeps coming up. So thank you. And I'll be excited to see everyone at Rath Yatra over the weekend.
Howdy, Bo. Thank you. It makes me think of my one of my old friends from my neighborhood. I grew up in the government projects. I had a lot of friends that I hung out with. And this one friend of mine, after I joined the movement, he was a heroin addict, even when I lived in the quote unquote the hood. Nice man, but surrendered to that. He used to see me downtown on Harinam. And one day he said, because my name was Benny, he said, Benny, man, I don't know what it is you got, brother. Because he knew what I was like before I became a devotee. I was in the drug scene, the music scene, the sex scene, all that good stuff, dressing up like I thought I was a big star. My head was swollen as big as the moon. So he knew all that about me. We were very close friends. So he knew how I had transformed into a devotee. And he would see me with my dhoti, and I was a brahmachari, tilak, everything, playing mridanga and chanting with great enthusiasm. So he said, Benny, man, I don't know what it is you got, brother, but I want it. I want that, man. Because he wanted, like you said, Bhakti Bhakti, he wanted out. He didn't know how to get out, but he knew he wanted something. And what I was, exhibiting in my humble little service, he wanted that. And by saying that in my presence, I'm sure Krishna gave him some blessing because he was appreciating this little, little devotee me. I'm not a big, just small devotee, but he was appreciating. What he was appreciating is devotional service, the effects of devotional service in my life. He was appreciating that. And I never thought about that until now. Thank you, Dr. Bob. He must have gotten some benefit from that. Must have. To appreciate a devotee's service, that's a big deal. So thank you for reminding me. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna.
Hari Bol. Hey, Bhakti Shan.
Hare Krishna.
The great actor. I love your performance.
So, well, just a comment on this verse and something about Krishna consciousness that has always stuck out to me as so powerful. The distinction that is made in this fruit of work being offered in the service of the Lord, and how when it is not offered in the service of the Lord, it ends up as this acute source of trouble, as Prabhupada puts it. It's like without Krishna consciousness, our whole lives are completely focused on fruit of work and generating something so that we can gain it for ourselves and be happy. We end up in this kind of like one-dimensional existence where we're striving after this happiness that doesn't end up happening.
Yes.
So we're like stuck. And then once we're exposed to Krishna consciousness, there's this whole other dimension of understanding that gives this new scope to life, which is this particular, there's so many, but this particular dimension that opens up is we don't have to work always for our own benefit to get happiness, which doesn't come, but when we work to focus our happiness towards the Supreme, towards Krishna, we can actually move towards and start to experience that happiness. So it's like Krishna consciousness expanding our experience of life. Like it's like opening up this whole new dimension of life, like making life multi-dimensional, as opposed to like just going through and trying to figure it out, but never having any happiness. So that's just the comment I have. A very this particular point of like the philosophy always inspires me, and it's like it's something that keeps me like hooked and locked in. So
no, that's beautiful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That, as I said, I benefit from the realizations of devotees and how you're seeing things, and it adds to whatever my realizations are. Because excuse me, we have been around, like in my case, 48 plus years, and Vishnu Gadab practically 50 years, and Kaivalya, 40 something years, and we've been around and we've seen a lot of things. Guess what? We're learning every day from devotees like yourself, because you're experiencing it, and the experiences are different for each person. When it says te sam satata yuktanam bhajitam pritipurvakam vidami buddhi yogam tam, so that te sam satata yuktanam bhajitam pritipurvakam, that's individualized. Your level of devotion is probably different from mine. The realization that you're having is based on the level of love that you apply to your service. The more you apply love to your service, the more of that level of realization that you just expressed, it keeps getting bigger. As I said, there's that jurisdiction. It's like the jurisdiction of Philadelphia's police to the Ben Salem police, right? Ben Salem, however you say it. So they can't just cross over there and start arresting people. They have to go through a process, because there's a jurisdictional control. So the level of our realization, it has a level where it can only go here. And then that's as much as we can do. Guess what? Then Krishna takes it to the level you're talking about, to that whole nother dimension. That is contingent upon Krishna's blessings upon us, the Dami Buddhi Yogam, the Da'ami. I give the understanding. Also that verse in Bhagavatam, Srimvata Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana, Rijyantasto Yabhadrani Vidunoti Surisatam. Krishna's in the heart. And he's doing all of this. He gave you, Bhaktisham, the realization and the words to express it succinctly. That was Krishna. Your job is to remember that, not to think, hey, I'm Bhaktisham, I'm smart as a whip. Never, because that's the most dangerous slope to go down. That's what happens. When you start going into this research, applying our intelligence, be careful, it's a slippery slope. Whose intelligence? Sarvasya chaham ridishani visto matasmatir ganam apoanam cha. Krishna's, he's a source of intelligence. I mean, yes, was it Tuesday when we had class in Harrisburg, and Vishnu Kada read the actual exchange between Srila Prabhupada and a reporter, when Prabhupada is basically saying how Krishna speaks directly to the devotee, directly guiding him. Prabhupada said, I didn't write these books. Krishna wrote these books. So you didn't say what you just said, Bhaktisham, even though you said it beautifully. Krishna gave you the words to say. Krishna gave you the realization, which he's giving. He's giving it to all living beings. And as you pointed out very nicely, people use the intelligence Krishna is giving them to accumulate things that they think will make them happy. And they're just frustrated. Now, once we've been exposed to this Achintya philosophy way above our heads, above our pay grade, now we're like, wow, I would really like to be able to understand this more. And Krishna says, not a problem. Bhajitam priti purvakam. Just serve me with love. So the grand opportunity we have this weekend, and every day really, but this weekend especially, the grand opportunity is to express to Lord Jagannath our love and appreciation for what he's given us. That's the same Jagannath that Prabhupada was in front of, okay? Be aware of this. These are not new Jagannaths. These are the same Jagannath deities. And Srila Prabhupada was there in front of them. And they were really happy. You can tell they were so ecstatic. So Lord Jagannath wants to see our devotion so that he can give us more of what he gave you, Bhaktisham, more realization. You can't make it in this movement without some realization. It is very hard. Until you get those kinds of solid realizations that meaningful to you, like you said, you meditate on that part of the philosophy, is meaningful to you. So when difficulties arise, you can reflect on the tools you have in your box and pull them out and say, wait a minute, I'm not going down that road because that's a dangerous road. I know what the end game is there. So I'm just, like I said, I'm just inspired by hearing devotees like yourself explain your realization. So thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare, Bo, is that Sita?
Yes.
How are you feeling?
Oh, much better. Much better. Thank you for asking.
Hare Bo.
So, you know, we suffer and then we want to get out of it. And then but then we have to get to the level of ahyukti bhakti, right? You know, how do you make that, you know, that, how do you take that step from where, you know, you have a desire and then you have to get out of that desire, right? How do you, if you can just give us some tips on that one.
Yeah, so you want to get from point A, which is attachment and all those things, to point B, which is devotional service, and that. Is that the correct understanding? Getting from A to B?
No, from B to C to D. So,
further down the road, right?
Right. You know, I don't know if I'm saying it right. Ahyutaki bhakti, right? Where you just you know, you're just doing devotional service and you don't have any desire of going, oh, I want to come to you, Krishna. No, I just want to serve you, right? And then, you know, how do you get to that? Because right now we're still like, oh, I'm suffering, I have to get out of here. Oh, Krishna, help me out of this. Krishna, help me out of that, right? So from there to, like, you know, to acceptance and to get to the point where, you know, your love is just for devotional service Krishna. And to serve, and to serve him and nothing else. You know, how do you make that transition?
Well, see, that transition, as I was pointing out to Bhakti Shan Prabhu, that transition is Krishna doing all of that. See, the problem that I feel we have is we're thinking, how can I do and do this and do that? So many different things, so many numbers of things, whatever. But all of that is being done by Krishna. And that's the realization that ensures we'll make the progress that you're describing, getting to that next level of unmotivated devotional service, uninterrupted, unmotivated. Ahaitukya pratiyata yatma suprasidati. So for the self to be totally satisfied, the devotional service has to be unmotivated. You can't do it for a reason to get something, like you were saying, to get out of the suffering. In the initial stages, because it's not wrong to come to Krishna consciousness with the desire to get free from material suffering, because that's one of the ways that people come. What is it? 4 kinds of people surrender. One of them is in distress. Somebody's inquisitive. Somebody is knowledge. Somebody's seeking wealth, which is a mystery. How do you come to ISKCON seeking wealth? But, you know, it's an authorized way to come to the Lord. So coming out of distress, I'm not saying everyone did. I'm saying many of us did. My distress was my mother had died, my father had died, and my oldest brother had died within 2 years. I was in total distress, but I tried to mask it through intoxication, sex, and music. I tried my best to hide it, but it kept surfacing, and I was inquiring. I wanted some understanding, and that little spark put me in contact with a devotee. Brahmanda Brahmite Kam Bhagavana Jeev Guru Krishna Prasadi Pai Bhakti. Krishna saw that I had a serious spark to understand something more, and he sent the devotee to me who was not an initiated devotee, Bhakta, who put me on the path of devotional service. That's how powerful it is. So, Sita Mataji, to get to those higher levels, we have to stay in the footprints of Srila Prabhupada, Mahajano Yanagata Sapanta, stay in those footprints and be patient. Rupa Goswami tells us to be enthusiastic, but also patient. The problem that many devotees have is being sometimes over-enthusiastic for the result, even if the result is Krishna consciousness. We want it so bad. Sometimes we jump too fast. We have to go step by step by step, as in seeing the deity. Srila Prabhupada clearly defines that you start at the lotus feet. Don't jump to the head. Start meditating at the lotus feet. So in devotional service, sadhana bhakti. It's a gradual process. And as you go through the process of sadhana bhakti, the raganuga aspects, the more spontaneous aspects start to manifest. And that pure devotional service that you're describing so nicely, Sita Mataji, it's there. It is the end game. We will attain it. We will understand when we get there because it's explained by the acharyas and explained by Srila Prabhupada, the symptoms of it. So we will know. And another way we can help ourselves is studying Bhagavad Gita chapter 13, text 8 through 12. Because there it talks about the elements of knowledge. Krishna describes it. And he says the first element is humility. If we practice humility, then all these other things will follow suit in terms of our spiritual development. But if we don't focus on humility, and I highly recommend all of us do a deep dive on humility. Lord Chaitanya, and the only things he wrote, 8 verses, number 3 is about humility. Very clear definition. And then Srila Prabhupada in that 13th chapter, in that first purport, he says humility means not being anxious for the satisfaction of being honored by others. And we're all contaminated with that, myself included. We're all contaminated with that. But in order to get to that level where we can experience the great joy of pure devotion service, it begins way back with humility and also understanding we're not this body, and then following and associating with more experienced devotees that we can guide. And I say this all the time, make sure you have 4 or 5, even more devotees that you can consult with if you're having any confusion about what you need to do next. Don't make major steps in your spiritual life, even your mundane life, unless you consult with those who are more experienced at applying the principles of Krishna consciousness in life. Quick example is Prabhupada talks about the Goswamis, that during their time, because it says dhira, adhira. The dhira means the sober persons. Adhira means not sober. So dhira, adhira. The sober persons and the unsober persons used to come to the Goswamis to resolve even family issues. Please, oh Goswami, please help us. So we should follow that practice. As we're trying to make progress in devotional service, make sure we have those that we can consult with to get guidance on that path. So I hope that helps, Sita Mataji.
Yes, it does. It does.
And please be careful the weekend. Just don't do too much. Just stay clear. I'm gonna keep an eye and make sure you don't. Okay.
Thank you, Babu. Thank
Hare
you.
Bol, Hare Krishna. Drona, look like you're in deep meditation. Share something with us.
I'm in deep meditation on the days ahead and all the wonderful activities that are before us.
Yes.
We hope to see everybody. I believe tonight we are starting with the flower garlands and the vegetable cut up.
Wow.
Tonight. Also tonight, we're having the Srila Prabhupada night reading study at from 7 to 8 o'clock. But also there'll be activities at the temple if you want to come there. And then tomorrow all day, starting around 11 o'clock, there'll be activity going on at the temple. And then of course, Rath Yatra Day as well. So we hope to see you all. A lot of engagement that is there. We can, if there's nothing else from anybody, we can conclude.
Thank you.
Give a moment to see if there's any other hands real quick. Okay. Balabhadra Prabhu, thank you so much. It's great to see you there. You have a different backdrop now that you're in Philadelphia.
I'm in Darshan's room. I love it's like the sun comes through the window. So we call it my sun room.
Very nice. Look forward to seeing you in the upcoming days. Chanting
I'll be there. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhus. Thank you to all the devotees for coming today.
Vanchakalpadurvasa kripa
sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Haribo Jagannath Swami ki.
Jai.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.